So should governors be paid, Stephen?
I sometimes think it's rather an attractive idea. I think of all the hours I've put in.
Yeah.
But
what are they worth per hour, do you think?
Well, I don't know. Well, this is it. Your cheque wouldn't be large enough to take it off.
Yeah.
I think John Adams once worked out that if you paid governors at even a very low managerial rate, it would cost $2 billion a year. So in a sense, it's a non-question because maybe they're going to agree to it. But I mean, why did you become a governor after all? And I mean, nobody does it for any reason other than wanting to benefit, try to some kind of public benefit, which I think is it's not just a noble and idealistic thing to do, it's a very necessary one, and unfortunately people will do it for that.
Big society in action.
It's big society in action, yeah exactly, and we're not, we don't want a society where people are just thinking, what's in it for me all the time. But nevertheless, I mean, you can look at it practically. I mean, why would you pay governors? Well, you pay governors if you felt you'd attract better people. And that would be the only sort of commercial reason for doing it. Well, how much are you then going to have to pay to get those better people to make it attractive? And I think if you're going to go back to skills and you're looking at attracting people from business to come along, presumably you're not going to offer the rate which is just going to appeal to the person who's been out of work for 6 months will do it for anything. That's not what they're looking for, excellent though they may be. But you'd be looking to get high level people, and you're then talking about a lot more money than was in the John Adams calculation.
Yeah. But recently, two people have been arguing for it, haven't they? Michael Wilshaw was talking about the possibility of paying governors in satisfactory schools or underperforming schools, and then Lord Jim Knight was talking about paying governors as a general principle, but only if you radically reduce the number overall. So
that would be the argument. I suppose it maybe becomes financially viable, but I mean, it would be pretty daft to change a whole system in order to be able to pay governors when you don't need to, and that's obviously not what was behind his argument. I mean, the Michael Wilshaw one, I think was, I don't think he'd thought that through.
No, it's a bit off the cuff.
It was off the cuff, and you can already do that in as much as your governors of struggling schools, assuming you're doing somebody's done something about the struggling school and put in new governors, you've got an IEB which can be paid already, and I know a lot of IEB members are not, but some are, so that state already exists. But I mean, the Jim Knight argument, you would certainly want to radically reduce the number of governors, but then I think you'd be looking at a different role for governors. And they're not like company directors, because we don't have the same powers, maybe like the non-executive directors, but a board of a company consists of executives too. So if you're going to do that, then I would want to think again and say, should the heads of department and deputy heads, depending on the size of the school and so on, be there as, if you like, the executive members of the board, and you then have a number of non-executive, which might be worth looking at, but I think we're a long way from that currently. And
also, I suppose if you did decide to pay governors generally, would there be any differentials? So would the chair of governors be paid more because they've got more work to do, more responsibility?
Yeah. Well, it's another argument you hear, isn't it, that the chairs should be paid because they do so much already. You certainly wouldn't want anybody to take on being chair for the money, though. That wouldn't really seem to be the right approach.
Not a prime motivation.
Not a prime motivation. Again, I think you're probably looking honoraria rather than a reasonable pay for the amount of work that you do. But I think there's a problem with that as well, because already chairs sort of have a tendency to take on too much. A lot of governing bodies, especially a lot of weak governing bodies, it's the chair who's doing all the work. The other governors aren't much involved, and you will probably exacerbate that situation, because the other governors would then say, well, you want to volunteer to take on that job? Oh, well, you're paid, I'm not, so you can do it.
You can do it. Yeah, I agree, because I think the best chair of governors would be the person who does the least.
Yes.
On the basis that the delegation is working.
That's true.
So you sit there in the middle of your web.
Yes.
Controlling everything. not quite what I meant, but yeah, I mean the principle is right, isn't it? If delegation works, then there's no reason why the chair should do any more than anyone else, and could well do less.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've never seen it happen. I live in hope.
Yes, well, we've all got that, haven't we?
Yeah.
But that does lead on to how do you run a governing body?
Yeah.
Actually, what is the chair's role? And I mean, inevitably the chair is always going to do more on an active governing body, but part of being a good chair is to delegate as much as possible. And your governing body is only going to be effective if all the governors, or at least most of the governors, are really up to date with what's going on. They all know the school. Yeah. They're all familiar with the results, the school standards, and what that means, and what the school's doing about it. Yeah. And that, I think, is good governance.